English translation, 142nd contact. Tuesday, 3rd February 1981, 23:53 hours.
You have really found the time to visit me today, about which I am very happy.
Even for me, it is a joy.
Of course I understand, but may I immediately, at the beginning, ask a question?
Sure, just ask.
You can still remember that I brought you 2 photos during our last contact?
Yes, those which I was to assess.
Yes, exactly. Today, I have something similar, namely a letter again, which clearly indicates that it is a swindle. Here, if you want to read it.
Thank you, of course I want to read it. Oh, it is, however, rather long. It will take some time. Therefore, have some patience, Simya. Say reads for a long time. After that, is this supposed to be a joke, or have these very faulty words been written with seriously deceitful intention?
They are really meant to be serious, obviously in order to perpetrate a fraud.
Then it truly does concern a fraud, which certainly must be explained by me. The few human races in the area of the Cassiopeia constellation in another space-time configuration are well known to us, but they have no resemblance to the life forms mentioned in this letter. Also, their flying apparatus do not correspond in any manner to the kind described here. And besides, their technology is not so far and highly developed that they could, with their own flying apparatuses, reach the Earth. The technology of one of the 2 races is presently developed so far that they prepare just the first flight attempts to outer space. And they stand just a little bit behind Earth's technological development. The second race, which is on another planet behind the Cassiopeia constellation, only has flying apparatuses that master their own planetary space somewhat certainly. Among these facts is the further complication that both of these races of human life forms exist in a different time plane in relation to the Earth. Like I said, so separated from the time plane that is known to the Earth human being and in which they live. So when the human beings of the Cassiopeia constellation one day master space travel, they still will not be able, for a long time, to penetrate into the time plane in which the Earth humans live their existence.
And in our time plane known to us, no human life forms exist who would be capable of spaceflight in Cassiopeia, that is to say, in that area.
Sure, there are human beings there, but these are not yet advanced in spaceflight, or are not yet so far advanced that they could carry out journeys through universal space. Like on the Earth, secret stations of foreign planet human races exist there on their planet, which do not, however, practice direct contact with the planet's inhabitants.
I understand. But now, another question. How many of all solar systems have planets that are actually inhabited by humans, which are visible from the Earth, and which are known to us? If one believed all alleged contact reports of Earth humans with extraterrestrials, practically all solar systems would be inhabited.
Sure, your words correspond to the truth. Truly, there are only very few solar systems inhabited by human life forms that are known to the Earth humans, and on the other hand, a lot of suns have no planetary systems. To these facts, there is still to add that many of the space-traveling races that come to the Earth are not resident in the time plane known to the Earth humans.
Ah, we already spoke very often about space-traveling human races that do not belong to you and which come, nevertheless, to the Earth. In which time plane do they all belong?
It is different for each. To mention all of them would be difficult and time-consuming.
Then let us say, for example, the humans of the area of Alpha Centauri, then Reticuli, or whatever it is, then...
The first ones live a tiny fraction of a second shifted from the Earth time plane, so therefore they cannot be reached by Earth inhabitants before they master time travel. The second human race you mentioned also does not live in the same time plane as the Earth humans. You should be content with this, because it would all be too much for today if we wanted to clarify these matters.
Well, then let us just stay with the letter. Then this Joseph Wanderka, who wrote this letter, is just another spinner?
He belongs to the same group as those two, of whom you brought me during the last contact visit the photos of the model heads.
Then the case is clear. I just do not understand one thing. This funny and crazy letter arrived into the hands of Wendell Stevens, who sent it for further examination of the situation to Herbert Runkle, who, in turn, presented it to me. Now, at the same time, I do not understand how and why Wendell does not check such things more closely, and why he too gullibly supposes that behind such obvious idiotic nonsense there could be a degree of truth. Even in other similar cases, I have already determined this. Wendell is just too gullible.
He is a researcher and a seeker, but unfortunately not a true expert, and besides, he is too credulous.
It also seems so to me.
Just with the photos and with this letter, it should have hit him that something cannot be right and does not correspond to the truth. Especially with this letter, it would have had to hit him that an attempted fraud was present, because certain similarities to your writings unmistakably point to the fact that these are clearly based on the fact that your written material was reproduced in a distorted and fraudulent form. A lot of this very clearly and without a doubt points to the fact that this person, Joseph Wanderka, has falsified compositions from your writings and from our contact reports in his own favor, and has maliciously and intentionally written them down as his own experiences.
Aha, we have already determined this. So then, it is true that this guy has stolen material from my writings.
Sure, because that is unmistakable and clear.
It is just a pity that such a fast one can be pulled on Wendell.
That is a true word, because he strives for the truth in a serious and extremely honest and correct manner in relation to all of these interests. It would be better for him if he consulted more with you for the clarification of such interests, because you are the only person on the earth who has the necessary insight and knowledge and experience with respect to extraterrestrial life and missiles and flying apparatuses of the same, in order to be able to be helpful to him in regards to this with good, honest, and sure advice.
I have certain experiences, knowledge, and insights. Yes, that is right. But of this, I do not want to make too much advertising. All too quickly, it would be said that I contest and deny the experiences, observations, and contacts of others out of selfishness, and for reasons of making myself out to be great. And unfortunately, this is exactly what I would have to do with approximately 98% of all cases, because at least this round percentage falls under lying, deception, charlatanry, and forgery, etc.
Nevertheless, it would be of great benefit for Wendell Stevens if he received your advice and your knowledge in such matters.
If that should be his wish, I will help him, of course.
That is good.
Then this case is also dismissed.
May I now ask you a question? I assume that I may do so on your birthday?
If you do not shun the answer?
No, then I may ask?
Certainly.
Thank you. During my last visit, I asked you about our continuation of the contacts.
I know, and I also understand. Now, yes, I have already thought about it.
I do not want to push you for an answer, because we have agreed that you would answer me when you go on the trip for the film and photo work.
I know, but I have really thought about it, and as well as the things stand, I can indeed give you the answer already. I will make a start again and thus resume the contacts.
That is dear of you. I always knew, through my foresight, that you would not break in spite of all the ugly events of recent years, and that you would continue with a better feeling again because you simply cannot throw away your obligation.
Then you have recognized it well.
For your decision, I am to pay you the thanks of all of us.
Thank you. Then all of you knew this?
There were never any doubts for us about the fact that you would take up your work again as soon as possible, as soon as you were healthy enough to be able to do so. Nevertheless, we made calculations that told us with 100% certainty that you had not reached a final decision when you interrupted the contacts. We found out that your action was only one of self-preservation because your strength was not enough anymore. You never had the intention of regarding the discontinuation of the contacts as being final. However, we understand this very well, and we ourselves could not have come to a better decision if we had been put before such by you. However, you could have spoken calmly with us about this because we would have understood you very well.
Unfortunately, I was not healthy enough to be able to do so. It was all just too much for me.
That is very well known to me.
I will indeed continue, but no longer in the center. I think that I will no longer return when I go on the trip for the photo work.
A change of location would be very good for you, especially if you would live in the warm South. Also for Engelbert, this would be of necessity for his health. But with all of this, I see problems concerning your family.
I know, but I will also go alone. Then, this problem solves itself.
However, you cannot be serious because you know, nevertheless, that certain circumstances require that your entire family is always with you. Without your family, you cannot fulfill your task. The connections are well known to you.
I know that, but I can still do my work as far as it is possible.
However, this work would be pointless because for the time being, it could never be carried out and be fulfilled in such a manner as is necessary.
But there really is not an alternative anymore. Part of the work, at least, would still be done. Really, girl, I can no longer do it otherwise because my wife thwarts me.
Then you have to discuss these matters thoroughly with her some other time.
I am tired of this. I cannot do this anymore.
Then Engelbert and Guido should take care of this matter. They will find the right words for her because they both truly know of the importance and requirements of our and your mission.
I will not make an attempt to win both of them for this impossibility.
But it must be, for it is of utmost importance for the continued existence and fulfillment of the mission.
Unfortunately, there is no understanding for the extension of the family.
You mean with your wife?
Of course. She does not make any attempts to delve herself into this matter.
It is, however, of unconditional necessity that she does this. Otherwise, there really is no hope for the fulfillment of the mission. Even a partially continuing work on your part or on our part would really have no value. It is enough to make one cry. You are now approaching a better mental health again, and there, in your immediate and most important surroundings, everything is attempted and undertaken to destroy everything again, before there can even be a fresh start. Nevertheless, I want to ask Engelbert and Guido.
Please do not talk any more about that.
But this must be done.
This is very serious to me because I cannot continue this drama anymore. Rather, I will really give up everything and will also no longer continue to do work that is still possible for me.
However, there must be a solution, because such is the only way to continue everything.
There is no solution because such a blockhead like my wife cannot be reached. And now, I really would not like to talk about it anymore. If it just has to be, then so also shall my work be.
Then under these circumstances, it will probably be so. But will you still keep to your work regarding the films and photographs?
Of course, because it is also my springboard.
Then until then, another solution might be able to be found if Guido and Engelbert.
Now it is the last straw for me. If you do not stop flashing that at me, then I will disappear once and for all. I am really suffering the drama with my wife.
I am sorry. Let us talk of something else.
I like this tone better.
Do you perhaps have any other questions?
I do, if I may ask.
Sure.
So then, can you explain to me exactly where the safest place for survival would be if the Great World War should actually break out? Even though we have often talked about this, you have never given me precise clues.
Nevertheless, you know that really is the safest place. Then secondly comes, wherein a suitable survival place would have to be created.
You told me that many times, but the first one is simply impossible because it would cost billions of sums if we wanted to build a hideout there. Also, there would be a political quarrel there because the earthly nations have decided together that it should remain a neutral area. But at the moment, it would no longer be neutral for the nations if human beings were to settle there permanently. The second place would be much better climatically than the first, but a suitable station for survival and real security would still cost at least many millions even there. But certainly, it could still be created there if we had enough people and money, or could find this within a short time. But those are really the only two recommendable places.
You spoke of the greatest possible security for survival. Yes, these two would be the only truly safe places.
In Europe, no place can be found where there could be safety, right?
Prior to any war, no. In this regard, there would be no security at all. Only in reference to earthquakes can safe or reasonably safe zones be mentioned.
Like Hinterschmidruti. But this is of no use to us if the great thumping nevertheless comes one day.
Until then, you would already have to be in security, with all necessary material, etc. That is, if you can actually continue your work and the whole mission is to be fulfilled. Otherwise, settling down in a safe place would have no meaning.
Of course, because what human life should be protected and be preserved if, through perversity and selfishness, etc., this life is, one way or another, unalterably exposed to decay and destruction.
It sounds inhumane, but it reflects the truth. But it would be good if everything—
Leave this now, please. It profits nothing. One should not cry over the loss of lost or declining things. Only fools cry about losing.
It is shocking to hear this profound truth from your mouth in this respect.
Maybe, but now, can you still answer another three-part question for me?
Sure.
It concerns the forms of time travel, if you want to give me information about this.
Ask.
Good, thank you. Yes, recently, I had a video rental. Its title was The Final Countdown. The story goes that an American aircraft carrier was driven by a magnetic storm into a dimension gate and was hurled from the year 1980 into the year 1941. Then, by an accident, so to speak, a crew member of the ship stayed behind in 1941, while the aircraft carrier returned to the year 1980 again by a new magnetic storm and by the dimension gate. Now, in the film, the left-behind crew member, who was approximately 30 years old in 1980, logically lived on from the time of 1941. This seems to be rather logical to me according to my knowledge. Now, however, comes what can no longer be logically placed into reality. The crew member left behind in 1941 pursued the outlet of the aircraft carrier in 1980, and this man, who would have had to become 69 years old in the meantime, could see himself as he went about as an approximately 30-year-old crew member on the ship, which then transported him, via the magnetic storm, into the past. According to this story, he would have been left behind in the year 1941, and then would have witnessed his own birth in 1950, and then would have lived parallel with himself for 30 years, so once young and once old.
That is impossible.
Precisely, nevertheless. It is impossible if both want to live in the same time plane. Both who are, nevertheless, only one person. The one staying in the past of 1941 would have had to die in 1949 at the latest, after which he would then have to be born again in 1950. This is so because the spirit form of the man is the same one at both times of his life, right?
That is very clearly explained. So it behaves in reality.
Well, such a coexistence of life would only be possible if two different dimensions existed.
That is right.
Good, then this case is clear. Then to the next one. Many humans are of the view that they could do different things in the past, and change the future if they had the opportunity for a journey into the past. But according to my knowledge, this is impossible because the future and the apparent present have already happened. That is, because the events of the future follow from the ones that already occurred in the past. Therefore, a man could not travel, for example, into the past to kill his own father or mother. He was begotten and born by a mother. Therefore, if a man returned to the past to kill his mother or his father still before his birth, then this past traveler could have never been born. Is this right?
Sure.
Good, so far so clear. Everything would be a paradox. And just to get around such a paradox, one would have to switch off the laws of space and time. So such a journey to the past can never take place in the way that the time-traveling person also actually arrives in the same material plane that exists in the past. And this also applies to the future. However, this also means that space and time are different in their expansion and in their speed in the past and in the future, which has the consequence for the time traveler that he penetrates into another dimension that is not handy for him materially. He could, indeed, live in this other dimension and exist if the living conditions there allowed it, but he could not enter into connection with the life forms there if he did not have special aids for this. He would remain virtually invisible to the life forms of the past or future, or he could be recognized, at most, as silhouettes. Am I properly oriented there?
Your explanation corresponds to the facts.
So this also means that with the events of the film The Final Countdown, a certain logic does, indeed, play along with them. But in truth, the one staying in the past obviously could not have lived on in material form in the normal time plane, even if he would have then skillfully died in 1949. He only could have lived on in an invisible form, or, at most, as silhouettes in the next possible time dimension during the time from 1941 to 1980, but not in material form, as this was given from 1941 to 1980, when the young man was born, and was later launched with the ship into the past. Is this also right?
Surely.
Ah, now it starts to take form. Now, if humans or machines and such travel into the past or the future, these are invisible there to the human beings or other life forms living there, although the time travelers can live there if they find suitable living conditions. This is in contrast to when humans or machines simply penetrate into parallel times and, thus, into parallel dimensions, which are temporal and spatial and are, thus, exactly materially the same as the time plane from which the time travelers came. This is so even if such another parallel dimension was created somewhat sooner or later than the one from which the time travelers came. It is just important that the spatial and temporal relationships are exactly the same, right?
Why do you always ask me if you have sufficient knowledge about this?
I just want to be sure. Well then, time travel into the past or future is always other dimensional than the past or future itself. Now, however, the possibility exists, as I know from Askett and from you and was also allowed to experience myself, that there are technical possibilities for one to make himself visible in the past or in the future, and to communicate with the life forms there. However, this can only happen if the matter of the time traveler is condensed by technological devices, or by consciousness forces, to such an extent that the life form becomes visible as a body of energy, which one can pass through, however, because it remains in any case differently dimensioned. Did I say this right?
Surely.
So next, the aforementioned relates to time traveling with the aid of purely natural or technological processes, as they are known to human and other life forms, or will one day become known according to their level of development. Time travels, therefore, offer no possibility at all for changing any events which already happened in the present or future in the past. To these forms, however, there is still to be added that a time travel exists which comes about via pure consciousness-related forces and, by which means it is possible to materialize oneself in the past or in the future. But for help in each case, the matter of the past or of the future must be taken. Nevertheless, a life form only becomes strong in this ability if he or she is accordingly developed in his or her consciousness, evolution, and lives out the necessary love for that purpose. This means that such a life form is no longer capable of committing illogical violence against the laws of nature. Thus, he or she never even enters into temptation anymore. If he or she travels to the past or to the future to commit illogical violence, such as wanting to change the future through additional acts or deeds in the past. On the other hand, his or her logical understanding is already so highly evolved that he or she already recognizes and knows that nothing more can be changed in the past that would shape the future differently than what has already happened. For the future, from which the time traveler came, has already happened as an effect of the preceding causes. If now, however, a time traveler materializes in the past or in the future, and meets himself or herself there, then this will also happen in the future if he or she came from there, because the spirit, that is to say, the spirit form, of the time traveler from the future also materializes in the past or in the future, depending on whether the trip leads from the future to the past or from the past to the future. This happened, for example, when I traveled with Askit into the past and then also into the future. And it also happened when I performed the experiment in Hinwil with the letters, which I then carried in the past, 2 days before the date of writing, to the post office.
That is all correctly explained. It is just that for the Earth humans, everything will be very confusing and incomprehensible.
I have already often experienced this because for normal thinking human beings, these things seem to be confusing and crazy. I have also noticed this in each case when talk was made about time traveling, which I performed with you. Time and space are still inexplicable to the Earth human, even though everything is easy to understand.
That is understandable because the Earth human still has no great knowledge about space and time. But on the other hand, you yourself have forgotten another important factor in your explanations, namely, that time traveling can also be carried out in a materialized form in the past or future with technological assistance, just as we have demonstrated it to you.
I have not forgotten that, and on the other hand, I even spoke of it when I mentioned time traveling with the help of consciousness forces.
Sure, but that technological aids can become highly effective time-traveling missiles through the power of consciousness. You did not mention this.
No, I thought that I should not talk about it in such an open manner.
It is also incomprehensible to the Earth humans that they cannot arrange any disaster with this knowledge. Hence, you could have calmly mentioned these matters and facts.
Previously, however, I was not allowed to do this.
Quite simply because at that time, it still would have raised too many problems for the various interested parties, in which they would have hopelessly entangled themselves.
That has indeed also already happened. Some have nearly gone mad.
That is known to me, but now this danger should be avoided.
If you say so.
It is as I say.
Then that is also good. In regards to this, that was actually everything that I had to say about time traveling. Except that now, I have the problem that we have talked too long, and nevertheless, I promise to be with my guests again in about 30 minutes. But now, 1.5 hours have passed, and somehow, I ought to be back again at the right time.
You know that this is no problem.
Of course not. With your infernal machine of a ship, indeed, nearly anything is possible.
I will come down to your workroom with you for a few minutes, if you will allow me.
Logically.
Then we will go back in time about 75 minutes.
That is enough. Then I can possibly go back into the kitchen again at 0030 HRs.
Then now, position yourself here.
What is that?
You would say that it is a time transmitter.
There are all kinds of new stuff in this new ship. Can you explain this in a little more detail once?
Not today.
I agree with you, but I would still have a question now. When you restore me back to time in each case, this is, once more, another kind of time travel. But how this works, I have not yet found out with all my contemplating. It is only clear to me that this type of time travel has nothing to do with forms, of which we have spoken just now.
I will explain this to you once in detail when everything is in place. But about this form of time travel, you may give no one information. Now, however, we should go.
Okay.
So, here we are. It is nice to be in your workroom once again, and this time I brought my protective device.
That was also wise when I think of the accident at that time.
Yes, in this I have done well, because someone is outside. Do you hear the faint sounds?
No, but it seems to be better if you go back before something happens again.
I also think so. Farewell, my friend, and think again about everything that we have discussed regarding the work and mission. Goodbye.
Goodbye, girl, take care, and I will think about it. Greet everyone rather nicely for me.
Gladly, thanks. Also pay my dear greetings. Goodbye.